So our first speaker is Jeremy Hindle, co-founder and CTO at Headstart, a very, very innovative company using machine learning in the recruitment space. So I'm going to hand over to Jeremy so we can hear more about what they're doing with data.
Cool, thanks. Evening, everyone. Thanks very much for inviting me. So tonight, what I want to talk about specifically why we chose to use Snowplow and why it's been really, really great for us. And then I'm going to talk about a little bit of what we actually do, and hopefully you'll understand why that's so important. And a lot of what is important about that is how we use contextual data for pretty much every single thing we do. So as introduced, my name is Jeremy. I'm responsible for product and technology and science at Headstart. My background originally started in neuroscience and then postgrad in psychology. And then I went into sort of like technical consultancy. I was a self-taught programmer. I kind of cut my teeth actually programming plugins for Minecraft. So my first programming language was unfortunately Java. And then I broke out from there and learned other things. C# next. Interestingly, because the next business that the next proper business which I ran was a computer games company. So I became one of the top Unity 3D developers worldwide and kind of grew with that platform. And with it, so did my game, given the fact that it was basically a reversed engineered version of the game engine with multiplayer. So every single time they released an update, we released an update, which was nice. So it's like new lighting in Unity 3D, and we're like, new lighting in UMU. I sold that to Jagex Game Studios a couple of years ago, just before we kicked off with Headstart. And like our goal with Headstart is really to become an end-to-end machine learning platform which can identify talent and potential in human beings. And that sounds like quite wishy-washy, but hopefully that will kind of come into, you'll understand what I mean by that. So the original idea behind Headstart was born in the concept that a person is more than a piece of paper. And the idea is that when you apply for a job now, you kind of fill out your resume and you're putting a custom resume per place, or CV. I've been pitching in America too much. You're putting down like a list of your achievements, and they don't really represent any kind of concept as to who that person is, how they're going to fit in with a team, whether they're going to mesh with a particular business's culture. And on top of that, it also isn't an indicator as to whether they're any good at a job. And this is particularly in early careers, right? So, and that's where we started as a business. Originally, Headstart was a career companion. Our goal was originally to allow students to apply for grad schemes with one application. Thereby, they would have to represent themselves as themselves because they aren't able to do a custom application per company that they apply for. So therefore, they're being forced to represent themselves. And it would save them a lot of time. And what we then know is that the ones who got hired, we could then do really, really simple machine learning and basically be able to give students a percentage chance that they would actually get hired before they even applied. Really, really simple ML. So the idea is that if you're going to spend your time applying to this law firm, we can actually tell you how likely it is you'll even get accepted. And if you're not, we can start recommending what it is, the things that you want to learn. So what we discovered after that is that it's really expensive to acquire students. And also, we only had knowledge about this market. And so we realized that it would be better to end up on the opposite side. So we were like, well, instead of acquiring students in every country around the world, we thought, how can we acquire this data? And what we realized was it was much more powerful if we just became the actual thing, the system which companies use to recruit through, particularly large enterprise employers. And so then what would happen is that a candidate would apply for a job at that company which they had recruited based through their advertising and their outreach based on what they thought was important. And yes, that does bias our data, and yes, we do account for it. But what then would happen is that they would apply. And one of the crazy things is like, how many applications do you reckon Starbucks gets a day? How many? Anyone? A day? Higher. Well, they get 26,000 applications a day at Starbucks. They have the highest, from like about 6 months ago, they had the highest volume of applications worldwide. And the thing is that they hire barely any of them. And this is the same for every large employer in the world. They get hundreds of thousands of applications every year, and they hire like 2% of them. And then every single other person has to wait 6 months to hear that they haven't got in. And then they try and find another job. And then what happens is you have everyone waiting 6 months, and then they go, I'm going to take my best offer. And then every company kind of has this like shuffle at the end trying to work out who they're going to hire. So what we do is that when a candidate gets rejected, we recommend them other companies where they have a highest chance of getting in. So what that means is that if a company rejects a candidate, they fall into our talent pool. And so what that means is we can go into any new market and not actually fully have to understand it, just the companies that use us have to understand it to acquire candidates, and we can grow a talent pool. So basically, it makes us a global business without having to have expertise in different markets. Cool. So once we knew this, and FYI, this was when we got into Y Combinator last summer, we were like, well, I was like, we need a really good way to store data. We're going to have really, really good analytics. And that means we really wanted event-based data. We wanted time-related data with snapshots of data, which was done at that point in time, because we knew that we weren't going to be able to do sophisticated machine learning at the start. But we knew that at the end, even like after one full recruitment cycle, we were going to have incredibly valuable data if we recorded it correctly. And so we needed to do that correctly, and it needed to be stored with context on every event. And this isn't like context which you think about like in a web sense. This is, so on the web you might be interested in their location, time of day, like all the stuff which Snowplow's enrichment stuff does, right? This is stuff to do with like the context around a person and a decision that they're making. And this isn't just the candidate side, this is also the recruiter side. So when a recruiter decides that they want to move somebody to interview two, what context of information were they making that decision in? They're making that decision of who else was in there, how many other candidates were in their pipeline, what were their quotas internally for hitting diversity statistics, all of those kind of things. And the idea is that against every single event that occurs within our platform, we have to restore this snapshotted information. So that was something which we knew. We needed lots and lots of replicated data for point-in-time events. We also didn't know what data we exactly needed because we didn't really know. We were at the beginning of our journey, and so we needed a system which was going to be flexible. All we knew was that there was going to be a disgusting amount of it, so it needed to be a scalable solution. And so where did we go to get information about this? A week before YC started, we actually went to Facebook, and I met with the live video team there, the guy who runs the whole project. They're working on the live streaming for mobile computer games, so you could embed like an SDK and you could stream computer games. And we were talking to them about, like, well, what kind of tools do you use in order to deal with your analytics? And they wouldn't tell us what they used, but what the guy did say was, you should check out Snowplow. And so I came back to the UK after meeting this guy. This was actually for our YC interview. We had that meeting while we were there for that. We decided to try and run our own Snowplow end-to-end solution in AWS. It was really hard. And so we really struggled with that. And it wasn't an area where we had expertise. We didn't have expertise in the business at that point with Hadoop. We didn't have expertise with any of the tools which Snowplow sits on. And so we investigated the managed solution, which we thought was really, really affordable given the risk to our business. And given the fact that we're a machine learning and technology company, what is the most valuable thing to you? It's your data collection. It's how you store it, and having it in a format which is like readable and understandable. So we valued it as really, really good value, and we started working with Snowplow. You got us up to speed almost instantly. We also had an amazing experience where you kind of backloaded our onboarding fees around YC so that we could wait for our fundraising to come in. And we just had an amazing experience starting with Snowplow. So I became, from that day forward, a massive evangelist for Snowplow. Tell every YC company to use them, and every large enterprise to use them as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan. So anyway, when I mentioned context earlier, what is it that I really mean about that? And one of the examples which is easiest to understand and grasp is the concept of grades. And I don't know about you, but like, if you look around yourselves and you think about like the people who you were at school with and things like that, and then just like think of a few people. Imagine there were two people, right? And they were applying to get into university. And both of them have identical grades, or equivalent ones. Like in the US, it'll be GPA. Here, it'll be like, whatever, A stars now, or something like that, or ABB, or whatever. And the thing is one of them has come from a background where they've had every opportunity given to them. They've been incredibly lucky. They've had a really nice life. And another person who's had significant adversity. Like they've had to overcome a lot of things in order to achieve those grades. Do you think those two people should be treated equally? Well, the answer is obviously not. They're not the same person in any sense. And the fact that they've both achieved the same grades doesn't mean the same thing. But this is actually something which still gets done. Companies still recruit based on grades. Universities still require you to have grades to get in. It's ridiculous. And the thing is that like, this is where context becomes really, really useful. So we break down grade context into two different categories, and we've done this a lot for the UK, and we're doing it for the US at the moment. We break it down into requirement and achievement context. So requirement context is basically the things which actually needed to be completed and to achieve the grade. So right now, grades are decided on what you got and the title of that grade, and maybe what university or school you went to, right? Rather than what is it that you actually did in order to achieve it. So requirement context is the modules you took, what was included in the syllabus for those modules, who were your lecturers, and you can even look at things like, what's that university or that particular educational institution famous for? And the thing is what's really nice about this is it doesn't have to be a traditional education institution. It could be an online institution. It could be any type of achievement. Once again, it's what is required in order to achieve that thing. So it's what did that individual have to do to get that qualification? So that's requirement context. So the other type of context is achievement context, and that is the environment in which that was received. So that can be things like class size, that can be things like teacher quality, that can be to do with things like how far you live away from a school or a location, did you have to work at the same time? What was you can work out a huge amount from somebody's postcode, for example. You can work out the value of their property, you can work out what jobs their parents likely had, you can work out the level of opportunity that individual has at a point in time. And so you take all of that, and the thing is then you take personality into it, and you go, okay, what happens if their class is really big? Well, then personality becomes really, really important all of a sudden, because the teacher can't cater to everyone in the class. What happens if you're somebody who's incredibly introverted and you're not somebody who feels like you can say you've got a problem? In a small class, that's not a problem. In a large class, that's a big problem, because it means the teacher has to be extremely good to be able to spot an individual falling behind, which means then you've basically got a particular set of people being disadvantaged from the very beginning. And if you look at, let's say, gender, for example, there's a skew. There are more introverted women at school level than extroverted, which means the whole education system is basically biased against women. Now, I'm not saying those statistics are the case across all schooling. I'm just saying in very large class sizes, there is a bias against people who are introverted because they're less likely to get the support they need. And this is context. And then what we do is you take that context and you weigh it on the grade that they get, and you attribute a value to it. Now, we do this for everything. And our goal is to do it for every single thing which you would find when you're assessing somebody to work out whether they're good to be able to do a particular task. So yeah, that's a lot of data. And we do it for all sorts of stuff. So that's all great. We say we do it, but to prove that, here's a case study which we just did with Accenture. This occurred through their recruitment cycle, which went from about November until January. And so the process was they went through our system, which was our recruitment platform. Then candidates who had above a 65% match score, which we calculated for that role, were then passed across into their legacy system, where they went through all of their old processes, including interviews, assessment centers, SJTs, situational judgment tests, stuff like that. And then they gave us the information of who got how far at the end, so we could link it back up again to our original match scores to see how correct we were. And the thing is like, we knew we were going to be good, but it was actually ridiculous. So we processed approximately 23,000 applications in a 2-month period. And this is the thing we knew we were going to do well on. We knew we were going to kill on candidate experience. So when you're talking about like a sales platform or something like that, you're like, oh, like our conversion rate is X, right? Like 91%, you'd be like, good conversion rate, that's solid. In the recruitment industry, the newest best platforms, which don't even serve enterprises, are happy with a 60% completion rate. That's pretty bad. That means almost half people don't even complete their application. And enterprise software platforms, so old recruitment platform systems, they only have a completion rate of somewhere between 30 to 40. That means more than half the people who start their application process don't finish it. And the bad thing about that is that the people who drop out tend to be from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and they tend to be from underrepresented minorities. And therefore, where companies are saying, we want to make sure that our diversity initiatives are working, they're losing them at the very beginning. So they don't even have an opportunity to get through. And that's purely an experience thing. That's like I live in this particular location, or I worked at this particular company for my work experience, and the system can't support it because it's not a place it knows about. We tried to do a comparison of a very well-known platform. We typed in Google as a place of work experience, and it said that place did not exist. So you'd have to refresh, and then when you refresh, you go back to the beginning of the whole process. You have to start again. It's not a good experience. Anyway, this is the thing which was really crazy. So when we looked at the data of the number of people who actually got hired and offered roles at the business, not hired, offered, what we discovered is that if Accenture recruiters had gone from the top down using our data, so they had literally just gone on the match scores which we had calculated for candidates based on profiling their existing business and all the contextual information, they would have only had to review 1,900 people out of the original 23,000, but for them about 11,000 because we cut off at 65%. And that 65%, by the way, the reason why we did that cutoff was because they had a minimum grade requirement, something which they want to get rid of, but they haven't been able to because of volume management. Using something like ours, they can now, which means that people can actually get through with grades, because 65% was the strongest cutoff statistically for people who had those grades. So that was a 91% time saving for them. And not only that, we improved the diversity of their pool of people who were in those top percentages. And what we identified when we looked at their legacy system is that at the screening stage, which is at the beginning, where it's a SJT, so a situational judgment test, and a person moving somebody manually to the next step. So you do see people's names. We found that not if you were a top tier candidate, but if you were like a mid to high tier candidate. So like somebody between like a 70 to 80%, 75 to 80% candidate. If you were of an Asian ethnic minority, you were 15% less likely to get through. And this is somebody who came out with an identical match score on our platform. And if you were from a black ethnic minority, you were 18% less likely to get through. And this is a company who super cares about diversity, and they really, really do. This is inherent bias in their existing legacy platform. And our platform doesn't do that. So yeah. So we killed it. So based off the back of that, I'm actually going to, So let me talk a little bit about a couple of the things that we are really excited about and we're starting to work on this year. So these are, statistically speaking, one of them is something I'm calling an opportunity coefficient. And the idea is that you can measure the level of opportunity that an individual has at every single milestone and point in their life. So think about what that means. That's talking about like when you're 13 years old and you're looking what schools you can go to. In the UK specifically, that depends on your catchment area, right? So what schools are even available to you at that point? Like you can also work out whether they could have gone to a private or a public school. And then you can work out, okay, well, they got into this school, therefore their opportunity changed this much based on statistics on that school. What are the Ofsted records of that school? What are its quality? What are the average grades that's come out of it? What's the employment rate of that particular place? Measure their opportunity again. What are their parents' jobs? All of this kind of thing. All of that public data. What are the crime levels where they live? What are the facilities available? What are the health levels? All of that kind of stuff. What's infrastructure like? What is the job availability during that period of time when they start looking for work experience? All of that kind of stuff. The idea is to give a singular figure which allows you to measure the level of opportunity an individual has. And then what we want to do is we want to use that to weight any achievement gained at that point in time. So there's a unified way to measure how good somebody is at something based on the level of opportunity which they've been given. So for example, people don't think about it, but even the way that you compose yourself and you sell yourself when you speak is a culmination of the environment which you've been brought up in. And the idea of this is that you don't think about it. Everyone knows it, but you don't think about it. And the idea is we want to be able to represent that as a number. And internally, we want to use that to weight our own assessments and our own algorithms. But eventually, what we want to do is we want to open that up. So any point solutions which exist as well, if they want to measure somebody on an individual basis, they can incorporate that weighting into their values. So think about, that could be anything. So that's that. This is the distance to learn model. Now, so this would, the goal of this is the sales pitchy thing is it will allow a company for the first time ever to hire based on a quantified ability to learn a new skill, based on their existing skills. So what that means is based on everything we know about you and everything you're good at, hard and soft skills, we can measure how difficult it is for you to learn a new skill. So with programming languages, that's super easy, right? If somebody knows like Python and Django, and they've been making websites and everything like that, and then you've got an entry-level machine learning role, they're going to be able to learn how to do that machine learning role significantly more easily than somebody who's been making JavaScript websites, because Python is like a really, really strong ecosystem for machine learning. Therefore, they're going to be able to pick everything up really, really quickly. It's like a 2-week thing rather than, a month-long thing. And the idea is to be able to do this with everything. And so we're building that skills graph at the moment. And the idea is that then companies can hire on potential. So you can concentrate on things which we believe are much more valuable coming forward in the workplace, which is how you interact with other people, whether you are culturally aligned with the direction of that business, whether you're motivated to work in that company, whether you're going to get on with your peers. And that's something which we think is actually far more important than actually somebody's capability on day one, rather than, because you can train people to be good. And fundamentally, you're probably going to be able to train them better than they learned anything at university or anything anyway. So things are going really, really well for us. We've got 3 offices. We've got our head office here in London, just around the corner. And we have a satellite office in San Francisco, which we opened during Y Combinator. And we're about to open a regional office in New York, which is super exciting in June. The really exciting projects that we're starting to work on right now is that we're just about to embark on a 250 location research project for a very well-known retailer. Like every single one of you would have seen this retailer within the last month or so at least. And that's really exciting for us because it's going to give us a new type of data. We think that we're going to be able to predict retention and job satisfaction based on how far away you live from the place that you work with a really, really strong measurement. And we can apply this to any other retailer as well. So we're really excited about that. Based off of the case study, which we just showed you, Accenture's rolling this out across the whole of the US and APAC, which is incredibly exciting for us. So yeah, thank you very much. I have no idea how long that was. I'm sorry if it was a long one. Any questions? Any questions? Yep.
So if you're taking the opportunities someone has when they achieve certain achievements in their history into account, do you have a way of offsetting like the fact that some of those some of the difficulties are going to be invisible? You've got the obvious general stuff like socioeconomic data, but individuals will have personal circumstances.
Yeah, and also things people won't divulge as well.
And if you do have a way of looking at how you
Well, the answer is no, we don't. Fundamentally, people will choose to divulge what they choose to divulge. Given the current status of the online world, I think people might feel tentative about divulging. What we can say is that we in every relationship we enter with our client, we're very clear that we're representing candidates. We're a candidate-focused business. We care about putting people into jobs. Our mission is really driven towards making the world better through finding people jobs which they enjoy. And I think what we do when we communicate with candidates about the information which we are collecting, and no, we don't cover everything yet, but we're doing a lot more than anyone else is that when we ask a candidate for a piece of information, we don't just ask for that information. It's one of the reasons why GDPR is like awesome for us. We love GDPR. GDPR is forcing everyone else to do what they should have been doing anyway. And that's telling people why you're asking for different bits of information. So if we, for example, ask for somebody's postcode when they're 14, we tell them why. We say, like, this is so that we can measure the level of opportunity you had when you were 14, so that we can offer equal opportunities to people who had difficult upbringings and blah, blah, blah. And then the links to a page where they can read about what we do and why that's important. And the thing is that it's an opt-in system, right? It's not forced. And that's a requirement in some countries, and it's different in others. And I think that our approach to that is that, yeah, we know it's not perfect, but we try to educate candidates when they're making their applications to divulge that information by telling them why we're doing it. And we anonymize all the information which doesn't need identity associated with it as well. So we let them know specifically, like, this bit of information after your application, we would like to keep this anonymously so that people similar to yourself can benefit from what you've had or where you've gone. Yeah, I think that's the best we can really do right now. I mean, I'd love it if we had all data, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Yeah.
So with all these data points coming in and kind of lots of information that the candidates submit to you, do you use like Snowplow enrichments or something like that to be able to basically get rid of the outliers and get rid of the lies, as it were? You know, I'm 14 and I've got a first from Oxford. no you don't, we realise that, let's eradicate your data before we put it in our databases?
We don't use Snowplow enrichment for that. We use Snowplow enrichment for a whole bunch of other things. So, and actually, we're about to start using it for another thing as well. So no, we don't, but we do our own checks. So, and that, I think that's mostly to do with the fact that we want to do that on the application side before the candidate actually does it. So when they make the submission, we want to engage the candidate and basically be like, you sure? And also we do that the other way. So one of the other things is that, particularly for diversity, is that individuals don't feel like they should divulge certain bits of information, or they're ashamed of certain things, or they don't think that they're important. So if somebody, for example, tries to submit an application which doesn't have a huge amount of information in there, we'll encourage them to add things and make them feel like things which don't seem important are important, and make it feel like every bit of information about who they are is important. Because, you know, if you're an accountant and you haven't got particularly good, let's say you did like you wanted to be an accountant and you did pretty badly at university and you got like a third or something and you dropped out or something like that. Like fundamentally, putting that person in the right job, and this is one of my favorite examples to give, is that like if you're an accountant and you come out, you might want to go work at like KPMG if you've got like a really good grade or something like that, or a bunch of other things. I don't really know much about accountancy, so I can't say where you might want to go. But let's say you were really into extreme sports and you followed GoPro, and like one of your favorite things was making skateboard videos on YouTube. We would encourage people to put that into their profile. And the reason why we'd encourage that is because, do you know who else needs accountants? Red Bull, GoPro, Virgin, lots of extreme sports, lots of companies which are big need accountants. And you know what? Those companies probably want an accountant who gives a shit about what they do. And fundamentally, that person will enjoy working there a lot more. I tell you what, they can also probably do the job just as well. And the thing is so what I would say is like, no, we do our own validation. We don't use Snowplow enrichment for that. We use it for other things. What I would say is that we need that to be on the client side, so we can encourage people to put information they don't put as well, which is something people often don't consider. So yeah, time of day is actually really important. I learned about that at Water Analytics conference. So if I was going to ask you, what is when you're making a meeting, when you're trying to set up a meeting, what is the main decision-making factor you have when you try to set up a meeting? Anyone? Yeah, it's availability, right? It's like, oh, who can come, right? So the thing is that that's not a good thing to really measure a period of time where you're using several bits of resources together. What you want to know is how productive people are going to be in that meeting, right? So there was a talk at Wharton which was talking about performance based on time of day. So if you are a night owl, which I am, this doesn't apply to you because apparently our performance is all over the place. But if you're not a night owl, so 80% of people, you have two performance peaks a day. And they both are good for specific types of function. So the first peak is about 11 a.m. in the morning, and that is a logical performance high. And then you have the lowest point of performance during the day is at 3:30 p.m. That's the slot you don't want, ever. You don't want to be doing anything at 3:30 p.m. And then you have the second peak, which is the highest peak, but it's a chaotic and creative peak, is at 11 p.m. And so the thing is, if you want to have a really structured brainstorming meeting, you should be doing that at the end of the day, because you're going to be creative. People are going to be more likely to contribute. You're going to have a much better brainstorming session. If you're going to be trying to work out a customer flow or a user journey, or you're trying to work out the best way to move data around your databases, you should be doing that at 11 a.m. And we can then weight their value of performance based on the time of day that they did it. So that's a good example of something that we could implement. Cool. Yeah.
What sort of size companies are you useful to?
Very high volume recruitment is where we offer the highest value.
Yeah.
Accenture, L'Oreal, BP, Vodafone, those are our current clients, our biggest clients, Expedia. Anything with high volume. So we're really good for entry-level recruitment because obviously it's a very high volume problem. We're really good for retail. Anything with high levels of churn is also something we can offer a huge amount of value to. But that being said, that's because that's where we're focusing on right now. I think that in time we'll be valuable to any kind of business because we can use network effects from our algorithms in order to predict what businesses are like. So instead of a company having to have a very high volume in order for us to work out what good looks like, we can actually look at companies which are similar to their company and then work out what good looks like by using that association as well. So we can actually be of value probably in about a year's time to smaller businesses as well. there's no reason why you can't use us as a normal recruitment platform. It's just we offer a significantly more value to large volume recruitment.
Yeah, it's sort of working for a smaller company. It felt like if you were getting individual candidates for a job, it's still that score might be useful.
Yes, it's just the score. So we have some sort of mid-tier size companies. So you're looking at sort of like a few thousand employees, but they don't get the same kind of volume of applications. The match scores with them, they right now they don't give you like, you can only review the top 9% of candidates. But all of them still probably fall in the top, well, I know that every single one in a client of ours of that size fell within the range of 68% and up. So we still offer a significant benefit there. It's just they're not our target market. We have a solution which can be used by very, very large enterprises, which no one else really offers right now. So it's our target audience. That doesn't really mean that we can't be used by other businesses. But we're also quite expensive. So.
Probably raised my other question as well, actually, is how are you deciding? You're saying you highlighted there some areas where you're less biased, but you kind of need a good truth to train these things.
Yep.
Understand these opportunity costs.
Yep.
That seems a very difficult problem.
So when we onboard a new client?
Well, just how yes, it sounds like you're using the existing applicants from
No, so if a business is large enough, we allow them to use their key performance indicators, and then we do an analysis very similar to what we do on candidates to every single one of their employees. And then we segment that by level of seniority, department, which isn't actually a department, it's a group of people who work together, and those key performance indicators. So basically we get a sort of fingerprint of every single one of their employees anonymized, but we know kind of where they work and how good they are. And so then what we can do is we can say, this is what good looks like in your business. This is what, you may have these core cultural values, but we're telling you right now, these are actually the values that are in your business, because it's all anonymous. And this is what we're being told by everyone. So based on the fact that this is what this looks like within your technical teams or within your business development teams or whatever like that, right? Is this what you want to hire more of? These are your high performers, they look like this. These are your low performers, they look like this. What are you looking for? And normally pretty much every company goes, oh, we want to find people like our high performers. And we go, well, you don't want people who are the same as your high performers. You want complementary people to your high performers. And so we look for that. So the line in the sand, as it were, and that's what it is. That's why we were so surprised by how good our Accenture stuff was, because it was our first recruitment cycle, our first data set, our first line in the sand before adjustment. It's a start, basically, and evidently it was better than we thought it would be. So, yeah. Yep.
Do you have any things about how you implement Snowplow, but if you had your time again, you'd do differently? Or were there any, I wish I knew this?
I would go with the managed solution straight away. That's one thing, definitely. And this is not to say that we're strong AWS users. Like we use Terraform, by the way, which I highly recommend every single one of you use. It's absolutely amazing. It will change your usage of the cloud significantly. So I would recommend, if you can, we weren't in a situation to do this, is work out all the things that you want to be recording. Have a really good think about what information you want to be recording around the events that you're choosing to record, because a lot of people don't think about that. You might, for example, be thinking, so let's say, for example, you're measuring like user journeys through a website, right? You might be thinking, okay, I've got context. I know where they've come from. I know all of this kind of information. But you don't really. What's another piece of really useful contextual information you could have through that? You know what advert they came from, but you don't know what other adverts are showing right now. You don't know what banners you've currently got showing on your website. Why not store a record of exactly what your website, why don't you store a screenshot of what your website looked like at that point in time? It's about thinking about like what other information can actually be useful to you. And I'm not saying that this is in like a human way. I'm not saying think about like contextual information which is useful to you that you can look at and make sense of yourself. You should be thinking about what data can you record that you can use an out-of-the-box machine learning algorithm in 6 months, which costs like 15 quid from Amazon or Google. I would say that those are probably the biggest pieces of advice I'd give you is record everything you can and record context around those things because it will be useful to you, basically. Yeah.
are there multiple machine learning algorithms going on in the sense that the candidate pool you guys are saying is yours, even though you're also getting a machine learning app or algorithm to go for a particular client? Right? If they don't pick out that client, they might be for a different client.
Yeah, so this is the key on our platform is we need to make a generalistic system in a non-generalistic way because we're not making generalistic AI. Like we're not at the scale to be able to do that kind of a thing. But what we do is there are lots of individual algorithms which do very specific things, and they're not customizable. But the values that come out of them are. So just as I don't know how familiar you are with this, but like if you have like a neural net, right, you can weight the values which come out of different parts of it, and then they get passed on to the next section. We actually just don't have it all in one neural net. We have it so it goes out into a system, and then it comes from that system into another set of algorithms, and then another set of algorithms. And that's for two reasons. One, it allows us to record data on what's happening inside the black box. It means we can report on it really effectively, and we can see what's going on. But the other reason is that the actual changes we make for companies aren't in the algorithms. They're within the weighting of how important each algorithm is in predicting for that particular company. So we almost have like algorithms which just do a thing, and then we have algorithms which work out whether those things predict effectively for that company. And then we have another algorithm which looks at those algorithms and makes sure these ones aren't being biased. And that's kind of how we have like a layered approach to it.
And so, as far as the data pipeline, is it all kind of flows into one model?
No, we have lots of different.
Okay, so
yeah.
it's modeled almost before it goes to the algorithms, or does the algorithm do the modeling?
It depends on the algorithm. So all the algorithms sit in their own microservices, and they get crunched in different environments. Like right now, for us to compute the first version of a match score, we put it through about 11 different layers of different auto-scaling Lambda function clusters with SQS queues in between them for prioritizing between what gets done first. And then it gets put into an auto-scaling cluster of the parent algorithm, which then calls out to all the other algorithms and then returns it back into another SQS queue, which then gets delivered and then distributed between MongoDB and Redshift and a couple of other things as well, like Elastic stuff for searching and things like that. So yeah. No, but that's why you need to use Terraform. We can deploy that in 15 seconds. Across multiple times. So we have a replicated version of our whole environment across 4 different environments, and we can spin up a whole demo environment instantly by just running a whole command. Terraform is the dream.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
Jeremy.
Thank you.